The afternoon sun glinted off the glass and steel of Meridian Tower as Thaddeus Everest stepped out of the charity gala, loosening his bow tie with a sigh of relief. The air tasted like freedom after 4 hours of handshakes and hollow conversations. 42 years old, at the pinnacle of his career as CEO of Meridian Innovations, and all he wanted was 5 minutes of genuine human interaction. The fundraiser had generated millions for children's medical research, yet Thad felt strangely empty as he descended the granite steps toward the Verdant Heights Plaza. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. That's when he heard them, 3 voices calling out in an almost musical unison that cut through the ambient noise of the upscale shopping district. Purified water! Support breakthrough medicine! Help save our mom! Thad paused, his attention caught by the unusual sales pitch. Street vendors weren't common in this part of Cascade Falls, especially not children. He turned toward the sound and saw them, 3 identical children, no older than 10, standing behind a makeshift booth decorated with hand-painted signs and stacked water bottles. Their precision was uncanny, movements synchronized as they handed bottles to passersby, made change, and delivered their pitch without missing a beat. Something pulled him toward them. Curiosity, perhaps, or the stark contrast between their determined faces and the indifferent crowd flowing around them. As he approached, he noticed how they had positioned themselves strategically at the corner with the highest foot traffic, their small table arranged with military precision. The water bottles bore custom labels reading "Hope Hydration" with a QR code beneath. "How much?" Thad asked, stopping before their booth. The tallest of the 3, though the difference was slight, stepped forward. $5 per bottle, sir. 100% of proceeds go to experimental treatment research for autoimmune disorders. The child's voice was steady, professional, as if they'd practiced this pitch 1,000 times. "That's quite expensive for water," Thad replied, more curious than deterred. A second child, with a small notebook tucked into their shirt pocket, spoke up. "The average charitable donation in Verdant Heights is $27. We're offering tangible value in exchange while maintaining a 400% markup to maximize fundraising efficiency." Thad couldn't suppress his smile. "That's impressively calculated." "Supply and demand," the child responded with a shrug. "Would you like still or sparkling? We have both." Before Thad could answer, the third triplet, slightly smaller with a colorful braided bracelet on their wrist, added softly, "Our mom needs the Rex Thaler protocol. Insurance won't cover it because it's experimental." As Thad looked more closely at the 3 children, something strange happened. A sensation like déjà vu washed over him. They were identical in almost every way, with the same coppery hair pulled back in practical ponytails, the same determined set to their jaws. But what struck him most forcefully were their eyes. Each child had heterochromia. One eye brown, one eye blue, exactly like his own. The coincidence was startling. "I'll take all of them," he said suddenly, gesturing to the remaining stock, at least 24 bottles. The first child's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "All of them." "Why?" "Not, it's for a good cause." Thad reached for his wallet. "I'm Thaddeus Everest." The children exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that twins, or in this case triplets, often share. "I'm Cypress," said the tallest one finally. "Lyric," said the one with the notebook. "Ren," said the one with the bracelet. "Rahaya," Cypress added after a moment. "We're the Rahaya Triplets." Rahaya. The name wasn't familiar to Thad, yet something about it snagged in his mind like a loose thread. He handed over several $100 bills. "Keep the change." "This is too much," Cypress said firmly, already counting out the proper change. "Consider it an investment in your business model," Thad replied. "May I ask what's wrong with your mother?" Another silent exchange between the siblings. Polymyositis with atypical immune response complications, Lyric answered finally. It's attacking her muscle tissue and internal organs. The standard treatments aren't working. Thad's eyebrows rose. That was a surprisingly technical response from a child. And this Rex-Thaler protocol might help? 83% remission, a rate in preliminary trials, Lyric continued, but insurance classifies it as investigational, and the out-of-pocket cost is astronomical, Cypress finished. Mom used to be a researcher, Wren added quietly. She understood the treatment data better than her doctors did. A researcher. Something clicked in Thad's mind, but he couldn't quite place it. Perhaps a moment of professional overlap from his years overseeing Meridian's biotech division. Where is your mother now? Thad asked. Sanctuary Medical Center, Wren said. Aunt Margot is with her today while we're here. And your father? The question slipped out before Thad could consider its appropriateness. Don't have one, Cypress answered curtly, the child's expression closing like a gate slamming shut. The sky darkened suddenly as clouds rolled across the sun and a cool breeze stirred the plaza. The triplets began efficiently packing up their operation, working in that same eerie synchronization. Storm's coming, Cypress announced, glancing skyward. 97% chance of precipitation within 30 minutes, Lyric added, closing their notebook. We need to get back to Mom, Wren said, already stacking the empty crates. Thad stood watching them, unable to shake the strange feeling that had settled over him. Something about these children stirred emotions he'd thought long buried. The grief of his supposed infertility, diagnosed after a childhood illness. The bitter arguments it had sparked with Vivienne before their divorce. The hollow space in his life that success had never quite filled. Let me help you pack up, he offered, already reaching for a crate, and I can give you a ride if you need one. No, thank you, Cypress answered immediately. We don't accept rides from strangers. Smart policy, Thad acknowledged, respecting their caution while feeling inexplicably disappointed. How about this? I run Meridian Innovations. We fund medical research. Maybe I can help with your mother's treatment another way. Cypress studied him with an intensity that seemed beyond their years. The medical company with the lighthouse logo? That's us, Thad confirmed. Another silent conference among the triplets. You can take our flyer, Lyric decided, handing over a carefully designed brochure. It has our Hope Hydration website and contact information. Thad accepted it, noting the professional quality of the material. These were no ordinary children selling lemonade, or in this case, water, on a street corner. I'll be in touch, he promised, helping them load the last crate despite Cypress's obvious reluctance. As they walked away, pulling their cart of supplies, Thad stood motionless, watching until they disappeared around a corner. The sensation of connection lingered, puzzling and persistent. He glanced down at the flyer in his hand, reading the details about their fundraising campaign and their mother, Indira Raheja, former biomedical researcher, now patient at Sanctuary Medical Center. The first fat raindrop hit the paper, smudging the ink slightly. Thad carefully folded the flyer and tucked it into his pocket as he headed for his car, his mind already spinning with possibilities. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Who was Indira Raheja, and why did her children stir such unfamiliar emotions within him? Back in his penthouse that evening, Thad sat at his desk, bow tie discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, and a glass of untouched scotch at his elbow as he stared at his computer screen. The Hope Hydration website was surprisingly sophisticated, clearly designed by professionals. The donation counter showed they'd raised just over $47,000 toward a goal of $300,000. Impressive for a children's fundraiser, but nowhere near what they needed. His finger hovered over the donate button. It would be easy to transfer the full amount anonymously. He could afford it without blinking, but something held him back. Not financial caution, but an instinct that this connection warranted more than a simple financial transaction. He opened another browser tab and typed Indira Raheja Researcher into the search field. The results loaded and Thad's breath caught. The woman in the professional headshot had the same coppery hair as the triplets, pulled back in a practical bun, her face angular and intelligent, but it was her eyes that held him frozen. One brown, one blue, heterochromia, just like his own, just like the children's. The statistical improbability was staggering. Her biography listed her credentials: PhD in molecular biology from MIT, postdoctoral fellowship at Johns Hopkins, research positions at several prestigious institutions, and then Thad felt a jolt of recognition. 5 years at Meridian Innovations Research Division, ending abruptly 11 years ago. 11 years ago, the triplets appeared to be around 10. He pulled up Meridian's employee archives using his executive access codes. Indira Raheja, ID number 8294, had worked in the Fertility and Reproductive Technology Division from 2010-2014. Her performance reviews were exemplary. Her research contributions significant, particularly on Project Nexus, a groundbreaking study on novel fertility treatments for previously inviable candidates. Candidates like him. Thad sat back, mind racing. During that period, he'd been deeply involved in the business side of Meridian, focusing on taking the company public. He'd only occasionally visited the research divisions, mostly for photo opportunities and investor tours, but he had participated in one significant way as a tissue donor for research purposes. At his doctor's suggestion, he'd provided samples to Meridian's research team, knowing his condition might help advance treatments for others like him. He'd signed the standard releases, permitting use for research, but specifically prohibiting any attempt at creating viable embryos. It had been a formality. He'd been declared conclusively sterile since childhood. With trembling fingers, Thad reached for his phone and dialed a number. "Zephyr, it's Thad. I need your help with something discreet." Dr. Zephyr Chen, medical director at Sanctuary and Thad's friend since college, would have access to Indira's records. "What's going on, Thad? You sound strange. I need you to look into a patient named Indira Raheja. Polymyositis case, being considered for the Rexthaler protocol. You know I can't discuss patients, even with you. I'll be making a significant donation to cover her treatment. I just need some background first." Silence stretched between them. "This is unusual for you," Zephyr finally said. "What's your interest in this case?" Thad chose his words carefully. "Her children are running an impressive fundraising campaign. I met them today. I'm curious. The triplets. They've become minor celebrities around here. Quite remarkable children, very devoted to their mother. Yes, they're distinctive. Those eyes, the heterochromia. Striking, isn't it? Genetic, obviously. They got it from their mother. And possibly from elsewhere, Thad thought, but didn't say. Zephyr, I need to know, is there anything unusual about their birth history? Fertility treatments, perhaps?" Another pause, longer this time. "Why are you asking these specific questions, Thad? Please, Zephyr, it's important." He heard his friend sigh. "I can't access those records without reason, but I could arrange a meeting between you and Dr. Raheja if you're serious about the donation. She's conscious and stable at present. Set it up tomorrow, if possible." After ending the call, Thad walked to his bathroom and stared at his reflection in the mirror. One brown eye, one blue eye gazed back at him. a genetic quirk so rare it occurred in less than 1% of the population. The mathematical probability of encountering 3 children with the same condition, all born to a woman who had worked in his company's fertility research division during the precise period he'd been a tissue donor. Sleep eluded him that night. He paced his penthouse, mind churning with calculations and possibilities, with half-formed hopes and fears he dared not fully articulate. By morning, he'd made a decision. Whatever the truth might be, he would approach it methodically, gather evidence, avoid assumptions. The sterile corridors of Sanctuary Medical Center seemed fitting for the scientific inquiry Thad was undertaking, though the stakes felt profoundly personal in a way no business negotiation ever had. Zephyr met him at the entrance to the private, patient wing, eyebrows rising at the sight of his friend's haggard appearance. "You look terrible," he observed. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not really," Thad admitted. "Have you arranged the meeting?" "Yes, but I've only told her a potential donor wishes to discuss her case. Nothing about your specific questions." Zephyr studied him carefully. "Thad, what's going on here?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," Thad replied honestly, "but I intend to find out." Zephyr led him through the corridor and paused outside a private room. "She's having a relatively good day, but don't tire her. The children aren't here. They're at school." That was probably for the best, Thad thought. This first conversation should be with Indira alone. Zephyr knocked lightly, then opened the door. "Dr. Raheya, your visitor is here." The woman propped up in the hospital bed appeared both stronger and more fragile than her photograph had suggested. Illness had thinned her face, but her eyes, those distinctive mismatched eyes, remained sharp and intelligent. Her coppery hair, now streaked with premature gray, was braided over one shoulder. Medical equipment surrounded her, monitoring vital signs and delivering medications through an IV. "Mr. Everest," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "This is unexpected." Thad felt a jolt of surprise. "You recognize me." A slight smile curved her lips. "Your face has been on the cover of Forbes twice in the past year, and I did work for your company for 5 years." "Yes," Thad said, taking the seat beside her bed as Zephyr discreetly withdrew. "That's partly why I'm here. I met your children yesterday." Something flickered in Indira's expression. Caution, perhaps. "My fundraising entrepreneurs. They're quite determined." "They're remarkable," Thad agreed. "Very mature for their age. Very distinctive." Her mismatched eyes held his. "Unwavering. What exactly brings the CEO of Meridian Innovations to my hospital room, Mr. Everest?" Direct approach, then. He could respect that. "I'm interested in funding your treatment. The Rexthaler protocol has shown promising results, and I understand the financial barriers are substantial." "They are," she acknowledged. "But curiosity about my children and generosity toward a former employee hardly seems sufficient motivation. For a $250,000 donation, what's your actual interest here?" Thad leaned forward slightly. "I was struck by a few coincidences. Your children all have heterochromia, one brown eye, one blue, just like you." He paused. "And just like me." Indira's expression remained carefully neutral, but the monitor beside her bed registered a slight acceleration in her heart rate. "Genetic coincidences happen," she said evenly. "True. But when combined with the fact that you worked specifically in Meridian's fertility research division during a period when I was a tissue donor for Project Nexus, the statistical improbabilities become significant." The room fell, silent except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Indira's gaze dropped to her hands, folded in her lap. "I've wondered when this conversation might come," she said finally, her voice quieter. "Though I never expected it under these circumstances." "Then I'm right?" Thad asked, his heart suddenly pounding. "The triplets?" Are your biological children? Indira finished for him. Yes. Despite having suspected it, having calculated, the probabilities, hearing the confirmation aloud, sent a shock through Thad's system. He had children, 3 children, after a lifetime of believing it was impossible. How? He managed. I signed releases specifically prohibiting creation of viable embryos. Yes, Indira nodded. It was unintentional initially. I was researching a new protocol for treating certain types of male infertility. Your samples were ideal for the study because your condition presented unique cellular characteristics. The protocol worked better than anticipated. You created embryos from my genetic material without consent, Thad said, struggling to keep his voice level. I created a test case to validate the protocol, Indira corrected. It was never intended to progress beyond early cellular division, purely for research validation. But when I saw the results, she looked up, meeting his gaze directly. The viability was unprecedented. We'd made a breakthrough that could help thousands of people who'd been told, as you were, that they would never have biological children. So you decided to experiment further? On yourself? A flash of defiance crossed her face. I made a choice, a personal one, without informing me. Yes, she acknowledged, without informing you. Why? The question contained all the emotion Thad was struggling to process. Anger, confusion, a strange sense of betrayal mixed with wonder. Indira was silent for a long moment, seeming to gather her thoughts. I was 36, she began finally. Unmarried, focused on my career. I'd always wanted children, but the right relationship never materialized. My sister had just discovered she couldn't have children. It hit our family hard. She twisted the edge of her blanket between her fingers. Then there was this breakthrough, this miraculous possibility. I had a choice to make. You could have approached me, Thad insisted. Could I? Indira challenged. You were Thaddeus Everest, rising star of Meridian, recently married to socialite Vivian Crawford. Your public statements about not wanting children were well documented. The business is my legacy, you told the Wall Street Journal. She shook her head. Besides, the legal implications for the company, for the research, would have been catastrophic. So you just took matters into your own hands. I did, she admitted. I used the viable embryos for IVF. When I discovered it was triplets, I resigned from Meridian, signed an NDA about my research, and moved to the other side of the city. I've raised them on my own ever since, with some help from my sister Margot. Thad stood abruptly, needing to move to process. He paced the small room, running a hand through his hair. They don't know, do they? About me? No, Indira confirmed. They know they were conceived through IVF, that I wanted them desperately. They know their biological father was a tissue donor, nothing more specific. Thad turned back to her. And you never considered telling me? In 10 years. I considered it, she said quietly, especially after your divorce made headlines, the irreconcilable differences over starting a family. That seemed particularly cruel, given the circumstances. The irony struck Thad. With full force, his marriage had disintegrated largely due to his inability to father children, an inability that hadn't actually existed. Meanwhile, across the city, 3 children with his DNA had been growing up without his knowledge. I need time to process. In this, he said finally. I understand, Indira replied, but there's something else you should know. Thad braced himself for another revelation. The Rexthaler protocol that could treat my condition? It was developed by Meridian Innovations' autoimmune division 3 years ago. Thad frowned. That's not possible. We don't have a treatment by that name in our pipeline. Not in your pipeline, no, Indira agreed. In your rejected projects. Archive. The research team found it promising, but the market analysis showed limited profitability due to the rarity of the conditions it treats. The finance division shelved it. The revelation hit Thad with a wave of sick irony. "You're saying the treatment you need was developed by my company, but we decided not to pursue it because it wouldn't make enough money?" The business rationale was sound, Indira said with a scientist's detachment. "The patient population is small, the development costs substantial. But now you're one of those patients. Life has a certain symmetry sometimes," she observed with a faint smile. Thad returned to his chair, mind racing with implications both personal and professional. "I need to make some calls," he said finally, "about the treatment and everything else." "I expected you might be angry," Indira said, studying his face. Thad struggled to name the emotion. "Overwhelmed. I thought I understood my life, my past, my possibilities. Now I discover I have 3 children I never knew about, and the mother of those children is seriously ill with a condition my company might have been able to treat." He shook his head. "I need to reorient myself." "For what it's worth," Indira said softly, "they're extraordinary children. Brilliant, compassionate, determined. You would be proud of them. Her voice faltered slightly. "I've been trying to prepare them for the possibility of continuing without me." The monitor beeped a warning as her heart rate increased, and Thad could see the toll the conversation was taking. "You should rest," he said, standing again. "I'll speak with Zephyr about fast-tracking the protocol access, whatever it takes." "Thank you," Indira replied. "And the children?" Thad paused at the door. "I don't know yet," he answered honestly, "but I'd like to get to know them. Somehow." As he stepped into the corridor, closing the door quietly behind him, Thad felt as though he'd crossed a threshold in his life, a dividing line between everything he'd believed about himself and a new reality he was only beginning to comprehend. 3 children with his eyes, his DNA, his unknown legacy, a medical treatment within his power to provide, a woman who had made choices that altered his life without his knowledge or consent. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The sterile CEO who had built his empire on the assumption that he would never have a biological family now faced a truth that would redefine everything, especially himself. Zephyr was waiting at the nurse's station, trying and failing to appear. Nonchalant. "Well," he asked as Thad approached, "did you get the answers you were looking for?" "I got answers," Thad replied. "Whether they're the ones I was looking for remains to be seen. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," Thad corrected. 3 very real children who apparently carry my DNA. Zephyr's professional composure cracked. "Are you serious? The triplets are mine, biologically speaking. It's complicated. I need your help, Zephyr. 2 things immediately. First, get me everything you have on Indira's condition and the Rex Thaler protocol. Second, arrange for Meridian's research. Archives to be sent to my private server, specifically everything related to that protocol." "Thad, slow down. This is a lot to process." "I don't have time to process. Indira's condition is deteriorating, and apparently my company already developed a treatment that might help her. We just decided it wasn't profitable enough to pursue." Zephyr's expression shifted to one of clinical interest. "The Rex Thaler protocol was Meridian research? I had no idea." "Neither did I," Thad said grimly, "but I intend to find out everything about it, and about the children." "What are you planning to do?" Zephyr asked, concern evident in his voice. Thad clasped his friend's shoulder. "First, I'm going to save their mother's life. Then, I'm going to figure out how to be a father to 3 children who don't know I exist." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity as Thad marshaled resources with the same intensity he usually reserved for corporate acquisitions. His executive assistant, baffled by his sudden interest in archived medical research, had arranged for the delivery of dusty digital files that hadn't been accessed in years. His penthouse, normally pristine, now resembled a war room. Multiple screens displaying medical data, research protocols, and financial analyses. What he discovered made his stomach twist with corporate shame. The Rex Thaler protocol hadn't just been shelved, it had been actively suppressed. The treatment showed remarkable efficacy for a cluster of rare autoimmune disorders, but its limited target population meant profitability projections fell below Meridian's threshold. Even more damning, the research team had requested permission to publish their findings so other pharmaceutical companies might develop the treatment instead. Permission denied. Sometimes coincidences happen, Thad offered weakly. There's no such thing as coincidence, all three children recited in perfect unison, clearly echoing someone else's words. Indira's, he guessed. Just statistical clustering of seemingly related events, Lyric continued. Or patterns we haven't fully recognized yet, Ren added. Or people not telling the whole truth, Cypress finished, fixing Thad with a penetrating stare. Before Thad could formulate a response, they arrived at Sanctuary Medical Center. The triplets efficiently gathered their backpacks, thanked him with careful politeness, and led the way into the hospital with the familiarity of frequent visitors. Margot Kelly was waiting in the lobby, her resemblance to her sister evident despite her more casual style and darker hair. She studied Thad with thinly veiled suspicion. "Mr. Everest," she acknowledged. "Indira mentioned you'd visited." "Thank you for allowing me to drive the children," Thad said, extending his hand. "I was coming here anyway to discuss treatment options with Dr. Chen." Margot's handshake was brief but firm. "Indira told me about your history." The triplets were busy signing the visitor log, out of earshot, but still within sight. "All of it?" Thad asked quietly. Margot nodded. "I've known since they were born. I'm their legal guardian if anything happens to Indira." The statement carried clear protective warning. Thad respected it. "I want to help," he said simply, "with the treatment first and then whatever comes next." These children have had exactly one constant in their lives. Their mother, Margot said, her voice low but intense. They've never needed anyone else. If you're planning to swoop in playing savior and then disappear when it gets complicated, I suggest you stick to writing checks and nothing more. Before Thad could respond, Zephyr appeared at the entrance to the patient wing, clipboard in hand. His expression brightened at the sight of the triplets. "My favorite scientists," he greeted them. "Your mum's been asking for you. Is she having a good day?" Ren asked immediately, the child's intuitive grasp of her mother's condition evident. "Better than yesterday," Zephyr assured them, "and I have some exciting news about a potential new treatment we're exploring." The triplets' attention immediately focused with laser intensity. "The Rex Thaler protocol?" Lyric asked. "Has it been approved?" Zephyr glanced at Thad, surprised. "Actually, yes. How did you—" "We researched all possible treatment options ranked by efficacy data," Lyric explained matter-of-factly. "Rex Thaler showed the most promise for Mum's specific condition, but it wasn't commercially available," Cypress added, eyes narrowing at Thad. "Until today, apparently." "Well, why don't you three go see your mother while Mr. Everest, Dr. Chen, and I talk about the details?" Margot suggested, her tone making it clear this wasn't really a request. After the triplets disappeared down the hallway, Margot turned to face-eyed the two men. "All right, explain exactly what's happening and what strings are attached." "No strings," Thad said firmly. "The Rex Thaler protocol is being revived as a Meridian research initiative. Dr. Rahaya qualifies for the clinical trial as a priority candidate based on her condition profile and her prior contribution to Meridian's research. That's the official story, Margot noted. What's the real one? Thad glanced at Zephyr, who gave a slight nod of encouragement. The real story is that I learned yesterday that I'm the biological father of those 3 children, and I'm not about to let their mother die of a condition my company could have treated years ago if we'd prioritized patients over profit margins. Margot's expression softened slightly. Well, at least you're being honest now. I'd like to continue being honest, Thad said, including with the children eventually, but Indira's health comes first. Agreed, Zephyr interjected. And speaking of that, we should discuss the treatment protocol. We can begin as early as tomorrow morning. As they walked toward Zephyr's office, Thad felt the weight of Margot's assessing gaze. You know they're exceptional, don't you? She said quietly. Not just smart, though they're off the charts there, but perceptive. They notice everything, process it together. They'll figure out who you are, probably before you decide to tell them. I'm counting on it, Thad admitted. I just hope they'll give me a chance when they do. 2 days later, Thad sat in his office reviewing the early data from Indira's first treatment. The initial markers were promising. Inflammatory indicators decreasing, muscle enzyme levels stabilizing. Zephyr's cautious optimism had grown stronger with each lab result. A soft knock at his door pulled him from the medical charts. His assistant, Patricia, appeared looking somewhat flustered. Sir, there are children here to see you. They say it's important. Before Thad could respond, 3 small figures maneuvered around Patricia and marched into his office with the determination of corporate raiders. Cypress led the way, followed by Lyric with a tablet, and Wren clutching what appeared to be a handmade card. We need to talk, Cypress announced without preamble. I'll hold your calls, Patricia murmured, retreating and closing the door. Thad set aside his tablet, giving the triplets his full attention. How did you get here? Bus, then train, then another bus, Lyric answered. We mapped the most efficient route. Does your aunt know you're here? We left a note, Wren offered, looking slightly guilty. She was resting. Hospital chairs aren't comfortable for overnight stays. Thad made a mental note to arrange better accommodation for Margot. Your mother is responding well to the Rex Thaler protocol, Lyric interrupted. Her CRP levels have decreased 47% and her muscle enzyme markers show significant improvement. You've been reading her chart, Thad observed, impressed despite his concern about their unauthorized hospital journey. We always read Mum's charts, Cypress stated, as if this were perfectly normal for 10-year-olds. That's how we know which treatments work and which doctors are paying attention. Thad gestured to the small conference area in the corner of his office. Why don't we sit down and you can tell me why you're here? Meridian's intellectual property remained locked away, while patients like Indira suffered. Unacceptable, Thad muttered, pacing between screens, tie discarded hours ago, shirt crumpled. He'd built Meridian on the premise that innovation served humanity, that profit followed purpose. Somewhere along the way, that equation had reversed. His secure phone chimed, Zephyr calling from Sanctuary Medical. I've reviewed everything, the doctor said without preamble. The Rex Thaler protocol is precisely what Indira needs. Her case matches the profile of the most successful trial outcomes almost perfectly. How soon could treatment begin if we had access? Thad asked. Immediately, but that's the issue. The synthesized compounds don't exist outside of Meridian's locked research vault. Consider that problem solved, Thad replied. I'll have everything delivered to Sanctuary within 48 hours. Thad, Zephyr's voice dropped. What you're proposing could have serious regulatory implications. Experimental treatments require... I know exactly what they require, Thad interrupted. By tomorrow morning, the Rex Thaler protocol will be Meridian's newest officially fast-tracked research initiative with Sanctuary Medical as our designated clinical partner. I'm calling an emergency board meeting in 2 hours. After ending the call, Thad stared at the screen displaying Indira's medical file. Her condition was worsening steadily. The triplets might soon lose their mother. His children might become orphans, while the treatment that could save her gathered digital dust in corporate archives. The board meeting was predictably contentious. 8 stern faces on the video conference looked bewildered by their CEO's sudden passion for a discontinued research project. "Let me understand this correctly," said Regina Blackwell, Meridian's longest-serving board member. "You want to revive a failed project, commit millions to its development, and fast-track it through our approval process, all by tomorrow." "The project didn't fail," Thad corrected. "Its efficacy was never in question. We shelved it because the target market was too small to hit our profit thresholds, which remains true today," pointed out CFO Martin Devereaux. "The financial analysis is unchanged." Thad leaned toward his camera. The analysis was flawed. It considered only direct monetization through treatment sales. It ignored long-term research applications, potential for rare disease tax credits, and most importantly, his voice hardened, our founding mission to advance medical treatment for all patients, not just those in statistically profitable categories. "This is about the Raheja case, isn't it?" asked Dr. Isabella Myers, head of Meridian's research division. "Zephyr Chen has been making inquiries about compassionate use exceptions." Thad had prepared for this question. "Dr. Raheja's case brought this issue to my attention. Yes, she's a former Meridian researcher whose work contributed to several profitable patents we currently hold. We have both moral and practical reasons to pursue her treatment." He didn't mention the triplets. That revelation would come later, after careful legal consultation and personal reflection. "Even if we agree," Regina said, "the timeline you're proposing is impossible. FDA compassionate use approval alone would take—" "I've already spoken with FDA contacts," Thad interrupted. "Given the compelling efficacy data and the urgent patient need, they're prepared to grant emergency approval, conditional on our commitment to full clinical trials." The board members exchanged glances, recognizing the determination in their CEO's voice. They'd seen this intensity before. When Thad wanted something to happen, it happened. "We'll need to issue a press release," Martin said finally. "Position this as a strategic expansion of our rare disease portfolio." "Draft it," Thad agreed, "but the priority is getting the protocol operational. I want synthesis beginning tonight." 3 hours later, Thad's town car pulled up outside Silver Lake Elementary, just as school was letting out. He debated the wisdom of this visit. Perhaps it was too soon, too abrupt. But some urgency drove him forward. He needed to see the triplets again, to observe them with his new knowledge, to begin building some tentative bridge that might eventually support the weight of truth. He spotted them immediately among the dispersing children. 3 identical figures in Navy school uniforms walking in perfect synchronization. Cypress in front, naturally taking the protective position. Lyric to the right, already consulting a notebook. Wren on the left, gaze drifting toward a butterfly near the fence. Without consciously intending to, Thad catalogued their features, searching for traces of himself. The set of Cypress's jaw, perhaps, or the analytical focus in Lyric's expression. How had he not seen it immediately? The resemblance was subtle, but unmistakable. The triplets noticed him before he could approach, their identical eyes widening in recognition. They conferred briefly, then changed direction toward his car. "Mr. Everest," Cypress acknowledged, formal as always. "Hello," Thad replied, suddenly uncertain. What did one say to children who didn't know they were yours? "I was hoping to speak with you about your mother's treatment," Lyric stepped forward. Have you made a decision about funding assistance? I have, Thad confirmed, but it's a bit more complicated than a simple donation. Could we talk somewhere? Perhaps there's a cafe nearby? The triplets exchanged glances. Aunt Margot is picking us up, Cypress said. We're going directly to the hospital. Perfect, Thad said. I'm headed there myself. Dr. Chen is expecting me. Another silent conference among the siblings. Then Ren spoke up. We could ride with you if Aunt Margot says it's okay. 20 minutes and one somewhat awkward phone conversation with Margot Kelly later, Thad found himself driving through Cascade Falls with 3 10-year-olds in his back seat. The silence felt weighted with unasked questions. Your water business is impressive, Thad said finally. Very entrepreneurial. It was Lyric's idea, Ren volunteered. The water part anyway. I designed the labels. And you execute the sales strategy? Thad asked Cypress, glancing in the rearview mirror. A non-committal shrug. Somebody has to handle the money. Mum says Cypress has good boundaries, Ren explained. People don't try to cheat when Cypress is watching. Good boundaries are important, Thad agreed, wondering if he was violating several by being here, by knowing what the children didn't yet know. Why are you really helping us? Cypress asked suddenly, the directness catching Thad off guard. I told you, I run a medical research company. That's what you do, not why you're doing this specific thing, Cypress interrupted. You're a CEO. CEOs are busy. They don't personally deliver rides to kids or visit patients. The child's perception was uncomfortably accurate. Thad chose his words carefully. Your mother worked for my company years ago. Her research was valuable. In fact, it turns out the treatment she needs was actually developed at Meridian, but never brought to market. I'm rectifying that oversight. That's statistically improbable, Lyric observed. The company that could treat Mum's condition is the same one she used to work for, and now the CEO is personally involved. The triplets arranged themselves on the sofa while Thad took a chair opposite them. Cypress sat in the center, clearly the designated spokesperson, flanked by siblings in their customary positions. We have questions, Cypress began, about Meridian Innovations, the Rex Thaler Protocol, and you. I'll answer what I can, Thad promised. Lyric activated the tablet. First, the Rex Thaler Protocol was developed by Meridian researchers in 2022, showed 83% efficacy in preliminary trials, but was never brought to market. Why? The directness of their approach caught Thad off guard. These were not typical children. The honest answer is that our financial projections showed limited profit potential due to the small patient population. It was a business decision I wasn't directly involved in, but one I should have questioned. The triplets exchanged glances, silently conferring. Second question, Cypress continued. Why did you specifically seek out our mom at the hospital? The timing correlates with your meeting us at the plaza, but your level of personal involvement suggests additional motivations. Thad hesitated. How much could he safely say without overstepping, without consulting Indira? He settled for a partial truth. When I learned who your mother was, a former Meridian researcher now suffering from a condition our company could potentially treat, I felt a responsibility to help. Professional courtesy, you might say. Professional courtesy doesn't typically involve emergency board meetings and fast-tracked FDA approvals, Lyric pointed out. We researched the standard timeline for such processes. What you accomplished would normally take months, if not years. I'm in a position to cut through bureaucracy when necessary, Thad said carefully. Third question, Cypress pressed on. What is your actual connection to our family? The directness of the question hung in the air. Thad felt sweat prickling at his collar. What makes you think there's a connection beyond what I've explained? Ren, quiet until now, spoke up. Your eyes, they're like ours. The child touched the corner of her right eye, the blue one. Mom has it too, heterochromia iridum. It's genetic, usually inherited in an autosomal dominant pattern. That could be coincidence, Thad suggested, though he knew better. The statistical probability of unrelated heterochromia is approximately 6 in 1,000, Lyric stated. The probability of two unrelated individuals both having the exact same brown-blue combination is exponentially smaller. We also found this, Cypress said, producing a folded paper from a pocket, in Mom's research journal from when she worked at Meridian. Thad accepted the paper with a sense of inevitability. It was a printout of a lab report, his lab report, from the tissue donation he'd provided 11 years ago. His name had been redacted, replaced with a donor ID, but at the bottom was a handwritten note in what he recognized as Indira's elegant script. Donor, ME7842, heterochromia confirmed, genetic marker isolated. He looked up to find 3 identical pairs of mismatched eyes studying him with identical intensity. You're donor ME7842, aren't you? Cypress asked quietly. Thad set the paper down carefully. I think this is a conversation we should have with your mother present. She doesn't know we found the journal, Ren admitted. It was in her special research box. The one she thinks we don't know about, Lyric added. We respect Mom's privacy, Cypress said defensively, but this is about us too. Thad took a deep breath. These children, his children, deserved honesty, but the situation required delicacy. Yes, I was a tissue donor for Meridian's fertility research division when your mother worked there, he confirmed. The full circumstances are complicated and not entirely mine to explain. Your mother and I have discussed it recently, and we both agree that your well-being comes first. So you are our biological father, Cypress stated bluntly. Not a question this time. According to the available evidence, yes. The triplets absorbed this confirmation without visible reaction beyond a quick glance at each other. Another silent conference. That explains the statistical anomalies, Lyric murmured, and why you're helping with the treatment, Ren added. Cypress remained focused on Thad. What do you want from us? The question carried layers of meaning, suspicion, curiosity, perhaps a hint of vulnerability beneath the child's composed exterior. Thad chose his next words with extreme care. Right now, all I want is to help your mother recover. After that, I'd like the opportunity to know you if you're open to it, but I have no intention of disrupting your lives or making demands. You and your mother are a family. I respect that. We should get back to the hospital, Cypress decided, standing abruptly. Aunt Margot will worry. I'll drive you, Thad offered, reaching for his phone, and I'll explain to your aunt where you've been. You won't tell Mom about the journal? Ren asked, concern creasing her brow. Not if you don't want me to, Thad promised, but secrets have a way of surfacing eventually. Sometimes it's better to bring them into the open on your own terms. The irony of this advice wasn't lost on him. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, Ren suddenly remembered the card clutched in her hand. Oh, we made this. For you, as a thank you for Mum's treatment. She handed over a carefully crafted card decorated with watercolor paintings of lighthouse beams reaching across stormy waters, Meridian's logo reimagined through a child's artistic vision. Inside, 3 distinct handwriting styles spelled out thanks. It's beautiful, Thad said, genuinely touched. Thank you. Ren did the art, Lyric explained. I calculated the proportions for the lighthouse. Cypress wrote the main message. We work better as a team, Cypress added, a hint of defensiveness in the statement. I can see that, Thad agreed, recognizing the subtle warning. They were a unit, inseparable, protective of each other and their mother. If he was to have any place in their lives, it would have to be on terms that respected that bond. At the hospital, Margot was indeed worried. Her relief at seeing the triplets quickly replaced by exasperation as they explained their unauthorized excursion. She listened to Thad's careful explanation of their visit, her expression softening when he showed her the thank you card. "They've been through so much," she said quietly, as the children rushed ahead to their mother's room. First, Indira's diagnosis, then the financial stress, now this treatment that feels like a miracle. They're processing a lot, including the truth about their paternity, Thad added. They figured it out. Margot didn't seem surprised. "I told you they would. What happens now? That depends on Indira's recovery and on what she wants, what they want. And what about what you want?" Thad considered the question as they walked toward Indira's room. 2 days ago, I would have said I wanted answers, maybe accountability. Now, he shook his head. "I just want them to be okay. All of them." They paused outside Indira's door, watching through the small window as the triplets surrounded their mother's bed, talking animatedly, likely updating her on their day, perhaps omitting certain details about corporate headquarters visits and paternity discoveries. "You know," Margot said thoughtfully, "when Indira first told me what she'd done, using your genetic material to conceive, I thought she was making a terrible mistake. Not because of the ethics, though those were questionable, but because I believed children should have 2 involved parents." She turned to face Thad directly. "For 10 years I've watched her prove me wrong. She's given those kids everything. They need stability, education, values, boundless love. They've never lacked for anything essential. I'm not trying to replace her or claim any rights," Thad assured her. "Good," Margot nodded, "because if you're going to be in their lives in any capacity, you need to understand that you're the newcomer here. You'll need to earn your place. Prove your commitment, demonstrate that you're capable of putting their needs above your own." "I understand," Thad said softly. "Do you?" Margot challenged. "Because from where I stand, your company's priority on profits over patients almost cost my sister her life. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence in your value system." The criticism stung precisely because it contained truth. "People can change," Thad said. "Sometimes they just need the right motivation." Inside the hospital room, Wren glanced toward the door and waved, her face brightening at the sight of her aunt and Thad. Indira followed her daughter's gaze, her eyes, those distinctive mismatched eyes that had been passed to the triplets, meeting Thad's through the glass. She nodded slightly, an acknowledgement and perhaps a tentative invitation. Thad felt something shift inside him, not the seismic revelation of discovering he had children, but something quieter and potentially more profound. The understanding that this complicated, unexpected family might somehow have room for him if he approached with the right intentions and without presumption. Zephyr appeared at the end of the corridor, clipboard in hand, smiling as he approached. "I have good news," he announced. "The latest lab results show significant improvement. If this trajectory continues, Indira could begin outpatient treatment within 2 weeks." "That's wonderful," Margot exclaimed, relief evident in her voice. "The Rex-Thaler protocol is exceeding expectations," Zephyr continued. "In fact, the research team wants to discuss adjustments to make it even more effective for her specific markers." "Whatever she needs," Thad agreed immediately. "Cost is no object." As Zephyr updated them on the technical details of Indira's treatment plan, Thad found his attention drawn back to the scene inside the hospital room. The triplets had arranged themselves around their mother's bed in their characteristic formation. Cypress, vigilant at the head, Lyric organizing medications on the side table, Wren gently holding her mother's hand. They functioned as a complete unit, each with their role, their purpose. Where could he possibly fit in this already perfect system? What could he offer that they didn't already have? The questions lingered as he followed Zephyr and Margot into the room, stepping carefully into the unfamiliar territory of family, a concept he had never truly understood until now. Spring arrived in Cascade Falls, bringing with it a gentle warmth that seemed to mirror Indira's gradual recovery. The Rexthaler protocol had stabilized her condition, transforming what had been a terminal prognosis into something manageable, even hopeful. After 6 weeks of intensive treatment, she had been discharged from Sanctuary Medical Center to continue therapy as an outpatient, returning to the modest apartment in Silver Lake District that the Triplets had worked so hard to preserve. Thad stood in the elevator of her building, a carefully prepared meal from Indira's favorite restaurant in one hand, a folder of documents in the other. These twice-weekly visits had become part of his routine, bringing dinner, discussing treatment progress, and gradually, cautiously, building a tenuous connection with the children who shared his DNA. The Triplets' initial wariness had evolved into a complex blend of curiosity, conditional acceptance, and ongoing assessment. They watched him constantly, conferring in their silent language, measuring his words and actions against some internal standard he could only guess at. Indira opened the door at his knock, her movements slower than they would have been before, her illness but steadier than they had been a month ago. The copper in her hair caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, highlighting the premature grey streaks that somehow enhanced rather than diminished her striking appearance. "Right on time," she observed with a small smile. "The children are finishing a science project in the living room." The apartment was modest but impeccably organized, bookshelves lined with academic texts and children's literature, walls decorated with the Triplets' artwork and academic achievements, furniture chosen for practicality rather than style. It spoke of priorities clearly defined: education, creativity, family connection. "How are you feeling today?" Thad asked, setting the food on the kitchen counter. "Better," Indira replied. "The morning stiffness is decreasing and I managed. A short walk around the block yesterday. That's excellent progress." The ease of their conversation still surprised him. After the initial shock and confrontation, they had settled into a careful civility built around their shared concern for the Triplets. Professional respect had gradually evolved into something approaching friendship, though boundaries remained firmly in place. "Thaddeus!" Wren's voice called from the living room. The youngest Triplet, by 4 minutes, had been the first to use his full name, claiming it was too elegant to abbreviate. "Come see what we built." The living room floor was covered with an elaborate construction of recycled materials: cardboard, plastic bottles, paper tubes, assembled into what appeared to be a miniature water filtration system. "It's a scaled prototype of our expanded hope hydration concept," Lyric explained, adjusting a small valve. "We're entering it in the citywide science competition next month. The current version can process 5 gallons per hour using minimal energy," Cypress added, eyeing Thad as if daring him to be unimpressed. Thad crouched down to examine the construction, genuinely impressed by its complexity. "You've incorporated solar power for the pumping mechanism and gravity-assisted flow to minimize energy requirements," Lyric confirmed, "plus UV purification. We're calling it the H3 system," Wren said proudly. "It's a triple solution. Get it? Because there's 3 of us?" "Very clever," Thad acknowledged, noting how the design demonstrated each child's distinct strengths: Cypress's structural precision, Lyric's technical innovation, Wren's aesthetic considerations. "What's the ultimate goal?" The Triplets exchanged glances, their silent communication system at work. "We want to develop portable water purification for communities without clean drinking water," Cyprus explained. Starting local, then expanding. It was originally just to earn money for Mom's treatment, Ren added candidly. But now we want to help other people too. That's admirable, Thad said sincerely. Have you considered patent protection for your design? Lyric nodded. We researched it, but the application fees are prohibitive for minors without significant financial resources. Thad made a mental note to address this discreetly. Perhaps I could offer some guidance on that front. Meridian has a substantial legal department experienced in patent applications. Another silent conference among the siblings. We'll consider it, Cyprus said finally. The child's standard response to any offer from Thad. Neither rejection nor acceptance, but careful evaluation. After dinner, while the triplets returned to their project, Thad and Indira sat at the kitchen table with cups of herbal tea. The folder he had brought remained unopened between them. They're truly extraordinary, Thad observed quietly. Not just their intelligence, but their values, their sense of purpose. They've had to grow up quickly, Indira replied, especially this past year. I sometimes worry they've missed parts of normal childhood, taking on so much responsibility. You've given them a remarkable foundation. Indira traced the rim of her cup thoughtfully. I've tried. Every decision I've made, including the original one to bring them into this world, has been with their best interests at heart. Adide looked up at him directly. I know you still haven't fully forgiven me for that decision. Thad considered her words carefully. The initial anger and sense of violation had faded in the face of the remarkable reality those choices had created. I've come to understand it better, he said finally, not just intellectually, but emotionally. Seeing them, knowing them, even in this limited way, I can't imagine a world where they don't exist. But I still wish I'd had the choice to be part of their lives from the beginning, not just for my sake, but for theirs. Indira nodded, accepting the gentle criticism. And now? What do you want now, Thaddeus? It was the question that had occupied his thoughts constantly over the past 2 months. What did he want from this unexpected family connection? What was he entitled to ask for? What was best for the children? I want a place in their lives, he said simply. Not to replace what you've built, not to disrupt their stability, but to add something meaningful, to know them and to let them know me if they choose to. And legally? Indira asked, nodding toward the folder. Thad opened it, revealing the documents inside. These are drafts, not demands. I wanted you to review them first before involving attorneys. Indira examined the papers, a proposed framework for establishing Thad's legal paternity while maintaining her primary custody, provisions for financial support that respected her independence, educational trusts for each child, and a medical proxy arrangement that would give Thad authority only if she were incapacitated. You've been thorough, she observed, turning the pages, and surprisingly modest in your requests. I'm not looking to take anything away from what you've built, Thad reiterated, just to secure a place at the edges of it with your approval. And if I were to disappear tomorrow? Indira asked, the question hanging between them, a reference to the very real possibility that had loomed over the family before the Rex-Thaler Protocol. What would you want then? Full custody, Thad answered without hesitation, but with complete respect for the structures and supports you've established. Margot's continued involvement, no disruption to their schooling or community connections. Indira studied him for a long moment. You've changed since we first met in my hospital room. Having one's entire worldview upended tends to have that effect, Thad acknowledged with a wry smile. The sound of laughter drifted from the living room. The triplets engaged in one of their rare moments of pure childish joy, momentarily free from the weight of adult concerns. They need to know you, Indira said finally. Really know you, not just as the man who funded my treatment or who shares their genetic markers, but as a person with history, flaws, values. Undo, she tapped the folder. This legal framework is necessary, but insufficient. They deserve the chance to decide for themselves what kind of relationship they want with their biological father. I agree, Thad said. How do we proceed? One step at a time, Indira replied, starting with honesty, complete honesty about how they came to be. The conversation with the triplets took place the following Sunday afternoon in the city park near their apartment. Indira had suggested neutral territory, somewhere without the emotional associations of home or hospital. Thad arrived to find the family already settled on a checkered blanket beneath a sprawling oak tree, a picnic basket between them. The triplets watched him approach with varying expressions, Cypress with characteristic wariness, Lyric with analytical interest, Wren with cautious optimism. They had known this conversation was coming. Indira had prepared them, though the full details remained unshared. Good afternoon, Thad greeted them, suddenly feeling awkward despite the carefully rehearsed words in his mind. We brought extra. Sandwiches, Wren offered, patting the space beside her on the blanket. Thank you, Thad said, taking the offered seat. I appreciate the invitation. It wasn't exactly an invitation, Cypress clarified. Mum said we needed to talk about important family matters. That's right, Indira confirmed, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of the moment. About how our family came to be and about possible changes to our family structure going forward. We already know the basics, Lyric stated, matter-of-factly. Thaddeus was a tissue donor at Meridian. You used his genetic material to conceive us through IVF without his knowledge or consent. The clinical precision of the child's summary was jarring, though factually accurate. Yes, Indira acknowledged, but I want you to understand the complete context of those decisions and to hear Thaddeus's perspective as well. She began, the story from the beginning, her work at Meridian's fertility research division, her personal desire for children, the breakthrough discovery using Thad's tissue samples, the ethical dilemma she had faced, and ultimately, her choice to proceed with the pregnancy without informing him. I believed I was making the right decision for everyone involved, she explained. Thaddeus was building his career and had publicly stated he didn't want children. I wanted you three more than anything. It seemed like the solution that would cause the least disruption, the least harm. The triplets listened with solemn attention, occasionally exchanging glances but asking no questions yet. What I didn't fully consider, Indira continued, was that circumstances change, people change. The choices that seemed right then might look different with time and perspective. She turned to Thad, an invitation to share his side of the story. When I provided tissue samples to Meridian's research division, Thad began carefully, I was told they would be used to develop treatments for others with similar fertility issues. I never imagined they would result in children, my children. I didn't believe that was even possible, given my medical condition. He paused, searching for words that could convey the complexity of his emotions without placing blame. When I discovered the truth 2 months ago, I was shocked, angry, confused. But I was also amazed to learn that I had 3 remarkable children in the world when I'd spent my entire adult life believing that would never be possible for me. It was overwhelming in every way. Is that why you helped with Mum's treatment? Cypress asked directly, because you found out we were your biological offspring? The term biological offspring sounded strange coming from a 10-year-old, but Thad appreciated the precision. It created emotional distance, protection. Yes, he answered, honestly. When I realized who you were and that your mother needed a treatment my company had developed but shelved, I felt a responsibility to help. Not just a generic corporate responsibility, but a personal one. Would you have helped if we weren't genetically related to you? Lyric pressed. Thad considered the question carefully. I would like to think I would have helped anyone in your mother's situation once I learned about the Rex-Thaler protocol being suppressed, but I can't honestly claim that I would have become personally involved to the same degree if I hadn't discovered our connection. The triplets seemed to appreciate his candor, exchanging one of their silent communications. What happens now? Ren asked, voicing the question that hung in the air. Indira reached out, drawing her children's attention back to her. That's partly for us to decide together. Thaddeus would like to establish a legal and personal relationship with you three. He's proposed an arrangement that would recognize him as your biological father while maintaining our family structure essentially as it is now. What would change? Cyprus asked immediately, ever the protector concerned with stability. Legally, you would have two parents instead of one, Indira explained. Thaddeus would contribute to your education and well-being financially. He would have certain rights to spend time with you, to be involved in major decisions about your lives with my approval. And if you got sick again? Lyric asked, the fear evident beneath the analytical tone. Then Thaddeus would become your guardian, working with Aunt Margot to care for you, Indira answered gently. But the Rex-Thaler protocol is working well. My prognosis is much improved. Do we have to call you Dad? Cyprus asked Thad directly, the question carrying layers of meaning beyond its surface simplicity. No, Thad replied immediately. You don't have to call me anything you're not comfortable with. Names and titles aren't what matter. It's the relationship we build that counts. And if we don't want a relationship, Cyprus persisted. If we're fine with things as they are. It was the question Thad had feared most, yet one he had prepared for. Then I would respect that decision, though I would hope you might leave the door open to reconsider in the future. The legal arrangements would remain in place for your protection and security, but the personal connection would develop only if and when you wanted it to. Another silent conference among the siblings, longer this time, more intense. Ren nodded. Slightly, Lyric tilted her head in consideration, and Cyprus gave an almost imperceptible shrug. Some agreement reached through their private language. We need time to process this information and discuss it privately, Lyric announced formally, speaking for the trio. Of course, Indira agreed. There's no rush to decide anything today. In the meantime, Thad added, reaching into his jacket pocket, I brought something that might help you understand more about where you come from, about my side of your genetic heritage. He handed each child a small leather-bound journal. These contain stories and photographs of my family, your biological grandparents, great-grandparents, cousins, medical histories, personality traits, talents and interests that might seem familiar to you. I thought you might be curious about these connections, regardless of what you decide about our relationship going forward. The triplets accepted. The journals with varying reactions, Cyprus with cautious reserve, Lyric with immediate interest, Ren with visible emotion. Your grandmother had heterochromia too, Thad said softly. That's where we both got it from. A dominant genetic trait with incomplete penetrance, Lyric murmured, already flipping through pages. She was an artist, Ren observed, pointing to a photograph of an elegant woman standing before an easel. Like me. Yes, Thad confirmed, something tightening in his chest at this recognition of connection. She painted landscapes mostly. Some of her work is still displayed in the Cascade Falls Art Museum. Is that why you recognized our water? Filtration design concepts, Cyprus asked, studying a different photograph. Because your father was an engineer? Probably, Thad acknowledged. He specialized in hydraulic systems for municipal infrastructure. I never made the connection until now. As the triplets explored the journals, Indira caught Thad's eye across the blanket, offering a small nod of approval. It had been the right gesture, providing information without pressure, offering connection without demand. The afternoon continued, with careful conversation, shared food, and gradually decreasing tension. When dark clouds threatened rain, they packed up the picnic and Thad offered rides home. "Actually," Wren said tentatively, "could we maybe see the art museum to look at our grandmother's paintings?" The request, the first initiative any of the triplets had taken toward exploring their paternal heritage, caught Thad by surprise. "If your mother approves, I'd be happy to take you," he replied, trying to contain his emotion at this small but significant opening. Indira smiled. "That sounds like a lovely idea." The Cascade Falls Art Museum occupied a renovated historical building downtown, its neoclassical facade a landmark in the city's cultural district. As they walked up the granite steps, Thad felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and anticipation. He hadn't visited his mother's exhibited works in years, and now he was introducing them to grandchildren she had never known. In the modern regionalists gallery, they found 3 of Eleanor Everest's landscapes, sweeping vistas of the mountains and valleys surrounding Cascade Falls, rendered in oils with a distinctive style that balanced realism with emotional interpretation. "They're beautiful," Wren breathed, standing before the largest canvas. "You can feel the wind in the trees." "Mom would have liked to hear you say that," Thad said quietly. "She believed art should engage all the senses, not just vision." "The perspective calculations are remarkably precise," Lyric noted, studying the vanishing points and proportions. She combined mathematical understanding with artistic expression. "That's what made her work unique," Thad agreed. "The marriage of technical precision and emotional resonance." Even Cypress seemed moved, studying the paintings with unusual intensity. "She signed them with just her initials," the child observed, pointing to the subtle EE in the corner of each canvas. "She believed the work should speak for itself, without the distraction of a full signature," Thad explained. "Like our water bottles," Cypress murmured. "We just put H3 on them, not our full names." The parallel, however small, created another thread of connection, a recognition of shared values across generations, despite the unusual circumstances of their relationship. As they moved through the gallery, Thad found himself sharing stories he hadn't thought about in years. His mother's studio in the backyard shed, her insistence on grinding her own pigments, the way she would take him hiking at dawn to observe how morning light transformed the landscape. The triplets listened with uncharacteristic attentiveness, absorbing this unexpected heritage. When they left the museum 2 hours later, something had shifted subtly in their dynamic. No definitive decisions had been made, no dramatic declarations offered, but a door had opened, a willingness to explore the possibility of connection. The following weeks brought gradual, careful progress. Tuesday dinner at Indira's apartment expanded to include an hour of what Lyric termed paternal knowledge exchange. Focused conversations about Thad's experiences, skills, and history. Weekend outings occasionally included visits to places significant to the Everest family history, his father's engineering firm, now run by a former colleague, the university where both his parents had taught, the lakeside cabin where he had spent childhood summers. The legal documents were signed with little fanfare, witnessed by Margot and Zephyr in Indira's living room. Paternity established, support arrangements formalized, educational trusts created. The paperwork that defined their relationship in the eyes of the law seemed almost secondary to the more complex emotional landscape they were navigating together. On a warm Friday afternoon in late May, Thad received an unexpected call from Cypress, the first time any of the triplets had. Contacted him directly without Indira's involvement. "We need your assistance," Cyprus stated without preamble. The H3 system prototype developed a structural flaw during testing. "The science competition is Monday. Can you help?" "Of course," Thad replied, immediately rearranging his schedule. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. He found all 3 children in the apartment's small dining area, which had been transformed into a workshop. The water filtration prototype from the park was now considerably more sophisticated, with clear tubing, precision-cut components, and a digital monitoring system. A hairline crack had developed in the main filtration chamber, threatening the entire operation. "We've tried epoxy sealants and silicone reinforcement," Lyric explained, pointing to the damaged section. "But the pressure pushes through during extended operation. We need food-grade materials that can withstand sustained hydraulic pressure," Cyprus added. "Our options are limited without specialized equipment." Thad examined the prototype carefully, impressed by its ingenuity despite the flaw. "Meridian's engineering lab has the materials and tools you would need. We could go there now, if your mother approves." Another silent conference among the siblings. "Mom's at physical therapy with Aunt Margot," Ren said. "But she left a signed permission note for emergencies." She produced a folded paper from her pocket. "We classified this as a scientific emergency." Thad couldn't suppress his smile at their resourcefulness. "A scientific emergency definitely qualifies." An hour later, the triplets stood wide-eyed in Meridian Innovations' state-of-the-art engineering laboratory, surrounded by equipment they had only read about in science magazines. The lab technicians, initially bemused by the presence of 3 identical children in their workspace, quickly became impressed by their knowledge and precision. The polycarbonate composite would provide optimal structural integrity while maintaining FDA compliance for potable water, Lyric was explaining to a senior engineer who nodded with genuine respect. "Your calculation for wall thickness accounting for maximum pressure scenarios is remarkably accurate," the engineer replied. "Most graduate students wouldn't consider those variables." Nearby, Cyprus was overseeing the fabrication of the replacement chamber, scrutinizing every measurement with characteristic intensity, while Ren consulted with a graphic designer about optimal color coding for the system's user interface. Thad stood back, watching the scene with a mixture of pride and amazement. These extraordinary children, his children, moved through the professional environment with natural confidence, their intelligence and purpose earning immediate respect from the adults around them. "They're quite something," Zephyr commented, having joined Thad after hearing about the visit. "Hard to believe they're only 10. 10 going on 30, Thad agreed, though Indira worries they've missed aspects of normal childhood. Perhaps," Zephyr mused, "but they seem to have gained something rare in the process. Clarity of purpose, confidence in their abilities, trust in each other." After several hours of concentrated work, the prototype had been successfully repaired and improved. As they prepared to leave, the triplets surprised Thad by presenting him with an official document, 3 signatures at the bottom. "We've decided to add your name to our patent application," Cyprus announced formally, "as a contributing engineer." "That's not necessary," Thad began. "I only provided access to the facilities." "You also identified the optimal composite material," Lyric pointed out, "and suggested the pressure relief valve modification. And you believed in our idea," Ren added softly. "That counts too." The document trembled slightly in Thad's hands, its significance extending far beyond intellectual property rights. It represented acceptance, acknowledgement, the beginning of a collaborative relationship. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm honored to be included." On the drive back to Silver Lake, the triplets were unusually animated, discussing their competition. prospects with newfound confidence. As they neared the apartment building, Cyprus, ever the direct one, suddenly asked, "If we win the science competition, would you come to the awards ceremony as our father?" The question hung in the air, its implications profound. Not just attendance at a school event, but public acknowledgement of their relationship, stepping into a role previously unfilled in their lives. "I would be proud to," Thad replied carefully, "if that's what all of you want." Another silent conference, briefer this time, more unified. "We've discussed it extensively," Lyric confirmed. "The statistical advantages of having two involved parents are well documented in developmental literature." Plus, Ren added with characteristic emotional insight, "Mum shouldn't have to do everything alone anymore, especially while she's still recovering." "And you're not completely terrible at being a father," Cyprus conceded, which from this child constituted high praise. "You're still learning, but you're improving at an acceptable rate." Thad laughed, genuinely moved by this clinical assessment of his parental progress. "I appreciate your patience with my learning curve." They arrived at the apartment to find Indira and Margot waiting, concerned about the children's extended absence despite the note they had left. As the triplets eagerly explained their adventure at Meridian's labs, showing off the improved prototype with pride, Thad caught Indira's eye across the room. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. The simple phrase encompassing gratitude not just for today's assistance, but for the carefully respectful approach he had maintained throughout their evolving situation. Later, as the evening wound down and the triplets were busy preparing their presentation materials for the competition, Thad and Indira stood together in the small kitchen, washing dishes in companionable silence. "Cyprus asked me to attend the science competition," Thad said quietly. "As their father, officially." Indira's hands stilled in the soapy water. "That's significant. Cyprus doesn't extend invitations lightly." "I know," Thad acknowledged. "I'm still trying to understand what I've done to earn that trust." "You've been patient," Indira replied. "Consistent. You've offered without demanding, supported without controlling. Most importantly, you've seen them, really seen them, as individuals, not just as extensions of yourself or achievements to claim." "They make it easy," Thad said. "They're extraordinary." "Yes, they are," Indira agreed, pride evident in her voice. "But parenting isn't always going to be about science competitions and museum visits. There will be arguments, disappointments, phases of rebellion. Are you prepared for that?" The question was fair, essential even. Was he truly committed to the full spectrum of parenthood, not just the rewarding moments, but the challenging ones as well? "I can't claim to be fully prepared," Thad answered honestly. "How could anyone be? But I'm committed to learning, to being present for all of it. They deserve nothing less." From the living room came the sound of laughter. Ren had apparently said something that amused even serious Cyprus, and Lyric was adding a deadpan comment that increased the hilarity. It was a moment of pure, uncomplicated childhood joy, a reminder that beneath their remarkable capabilities, they were still 3 10-year-old children finding their way through a complex world. "You know," Indira said thoughtfully, "when I made the decision to bring them into the world, I believed I was giving them the best possible start by focusing entirely on their needs, their development, their opportunities. I convinced myself that one parent who was fully committed was better than the complications of involving someone who might not share my priorities." She dried her hands on a kitchen towel, turning to face Thad directly. "I was wrong about that. Not about all of it. They've thrived in many ways, but about the assumption that their lives would be somehow diminished by the messiness of additional relationships, additional perspectives." "They've done remarkably well," Thad observed. "You should be proud of what you've accomplished." "I am," Indira acknowledged. But watching them with you these past weeks, seeing how they're beginning to incorporate your history, your knowledge, your different approach to problems into their understanding of themselves, I realize they deserve that all along. They deserve the full truth of their origins and the opportunity to know both halves of their genetic heritage. We can't change the past, Thad said gently, only move forward from here. Yes, Indira agreed, and I hope we're moving in the right direction. The triplets appeared in the kitchen doorway, their silent communication system having apparently alerted them to the serious conversation taking place. We've completed the presentation materials, Cypress announced. We need 7 minutes for a final rehearsal with audience feedback. Of course, Indira smiled. We'll be your test audience. As they settled in the living room to watch the triplets' carefully choreographed presentation, each child handling different aspects with their characteristic strengths, Thad felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. 2 months ago, he had been a successful but isolated man, defined primarily by his corporate achievements. Now he sat in a modest apartment in Silver Lake, part of something infinitely more valuable, a family, unconventional in its origins, but growing stronger in its connections each day. The H3 system stood on the coffee table, water flowing through its chambers in a perfect demonstration of the triplets' vision. 3 separate elements working in harmony to create something greater than the sum of its parts, much like the unusual family forming around them, Thad reflected, watching as Cypress confidently outlined their future plans for implementing the system in communities with contaminated water supplies. Any questions? Lyric asked as they concluded their presentation. Thad raised his hand, playing the role of serious judge. What inspired you to develop this solution? Dun. The triplets exchanged glances, and then, in a rare moment of complete synchronicity, all 3 turned to look at Indira. Our mum, they answered in perfect unison. She taught us that when you see a problem, you don't just complain about it, Cypress continued. You analyze it for potential solutions, Lyric added. And then you build something better, Ren finished. Indira's eyes glistened with tears, and Thad felt his own throat tighten with emotion. In that moment, observing the powerful bond between mother and children, he understood that his role would never be to replace or diminish what had been built before his arrival, but to add his own complementary strengths to their existing foundation. One more question, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion. What's next after the H3 system? What will you build together in the future? The triplets considered this, having one of their silent conferences, before Ren answered with characteristic optimism and unexpected insight. We don't know exactly, she said thoughtfully, but we have more resources now, more perspectives. She glanced at Thad, then back to her mother. More family to help us figure it out. More family, Thad repeated softly, the simple phrase containing all the complexity and promise of their unconventional journey. From strangers selling water bottles on a plaza to something that, despite its unusual beginnings, increasingly resembled a family finding its own unique path forward, together. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.